Have you ever felt like you're either too dependent on your partner or too distant? That it's hard to find the balance between those two things? Today, we're tackling how to find a healthy balance between independence and connection in marriage. I'll share practical steps to help you strengthen your own sense of self while deepening your relationship. If you don't know me, I'm Dr. Andrew Smith. I'm a clinical psychologist. I designed Rewire, an evidence-based treatment approach built on cognitive behavioral therapy backbone to put marriage and relationships in general at the center of what it means to live thriving, resilient lives. Today, I'm going to be sharing some of my insights from over 15 years of therapy and research work with couples and individuals to build healthier, more balanced connections. Before we dive in, remember to download our free relationship guide at rewirewellness.co. It's got all kinds of tools to help you develop a healthy sense of self in your marriage. You can put this stuff that I'm talking about right now into action today. So in today's video, it's all about balance, how to maintain a sense of self, of who you are, while staying connected to your spouse. Here's the roadmap for what we're going to cover. There's 4 different parts. Number 1, part 1, dangers of codependence. Part 2, the risks of complete separation, emotionally. Number 3, finding the balance. And number 4, practical steps to strengthen your sense of self. Start with part 1, the risk of codependence. Codependence is where your emotional well-being depends entirely on your partner's mood or validation. On any given day, if your sense of being okay relies on your spouse's approval, you're giving away a lot of power. And it creates a pressure-filled dynamic that's not good for your spouse. It's not good for you. It limits your individual health and your relationship growth potential. So the question I want you to ask for yourself is, does your happiness rely too much on your partner's mood, or do you only feel validated when they approve of your choices? I'll just draw very simply what codependence kind of looks like. These are 2 people very much overlapping in their identities and their sense of self. So much so that it's hard to tell the difference between one and the other. We'll compare that to some other images momentarily. So let's move to part 2, the risks of complete separation. On the other end of the spectrum is this complete separation. It's 2 people not overlapping emotionally. When we emotionally distance ourselves, we stop sharing in our spouse's joys and struggles. This lack of connection can turn marriage into a partnership that lacks true intimacy. Separation is often a reaction to the pain of codependence. So building boundaries and balance helps you avoid this outcome, but it leaves both partners disconnected. So think about it. Have you built walls to protect yourself, making it hard to stay emotionally present with your partner? Not necessarily asking you to share in the chat, but I want you to try to self-reflect and look deeply inside to see if that's true. Have you built some walls? Knowing, taking responsibility and accepting that reality is step 1. So let's move to part 3, finding the balance. The goal is to find a middle path where you're empathic and connected, yet still independent. Healthy balance means valuing your partner's insights without them being the only guiding voice in your life. This allows you to maintain your self-worth while staying open to your partner's perspective. Can you make independent choices while still weighing and considering your spouse's input? I think that's what we're after here. So let's move to part 4, the practical steps to strengthen your sense of self. Let's look at some practical steps. Number 1, setting emotional boundaries is really important. So define what's yours to manage emotionally and what happens to be your partner's or your spouse's to manage emotionally. This prevents emotional over-reliance and allows you to be more supportive so that you have gas in the tank to help them, so that you're not overwhelmed by what's going on in their lives. Number 2, value your own insight. I want you to consider your spouse's feedback, but remember that your own perspective matters just as much. Number 3, practical independent decision making. Start small by making a decision that reflects your values, like choosing a personal goal that doesn't require validation. So I want to encourage you to try these steps. Let me know in the chat which of these steps feels most doable. Emotional boundary setting, valuing your own insight, and practical independent decision making. Those are your options here that we're laying out today. Maybe you want to share one small decision that you have made that's been a success for you to move towards a little bit more identity independence so that you're not so interdependent. The thing about being too interdependent or totally separated is that they're both places that you can't live up to your values in your marriage on. When you're codependent, um, your ability to have the emotional bandwidth left over to help your spouse through their own journey and their own struggle in life is really limited. When you're completely emotionally separated, you turn a cold shoulder to the struggle that your spouse is having. Often I see that with folks who struggled with codependence and had to create some really rigid walls and boundaries. There's actually a middle path. Now, what we're talking about here is just one piece of the Rewire approach to building a balanced sense of self in marriage. There's a lot more tools. Check out the other videos, blog posts in our series on marriage by visiting rewirewellness.co. Download our free guide. It'll help you on your journey. So you could have done a lot of things with your time tonight, but you spent time here listening to this or today, whenever you're watching this. I really appreciate it. I'm really passionate about building healthy community and marriages. That's what the Rewire approach is all about. So a healthy marriage is one where you can be yourself while sharing deeply in the life of your spouse. Tell me in the chat which step you want to take, and don't forget to download the guide at rewirewellness.co. Here's to stronger, more balanced relationships. Join our community, join this movement. Thanks.